What if each one of us is always dreaming, even when awake, and we only see what our inner eye creates for us? Is this what hell is? A world shaped by Senua's nightmares? Maybe that's why people feared seeing the world through her eyes. Because if you believe that Senua's reality is twisted, you must accept that yours might be too.
Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be the second episode of Zivus Reviews, a show with no schedule cause I have ADHD and can only focus for so long. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Today we're going to be talking about another one of my favorite games, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. The second game is on the way, so I think it's time to revisit this masterpiece. Now this time I have two warnings for you. The first one is a spoiler alert, since we are going to be doing a deep dive into the story. The second warning is a trigger warning. This game is extremely dark and talks about topics like abuse, psychosis, PTSD, suicide, and more. If you are not comfortable with those topics, I advise you to click away from this video. Now to get into the actual game. It is my opinion that this game managed to represent mental illness better than any other game or media I have ever watched or played. They had medical professionals and people with psychosis on their team to help them shape this game, and the result is beautiful and terrifying. You truly connect with Senua as the main protagonist and even give in to her delusions, but more about that later. The game takes place in the late 8th century. Our protagonist Senua is a picked warrior who believes she is cursed. As we find out throughout the game, she is not cursed but in fact suffers from a mental illness called psychosis. She calls that psychosis the darkness. Her father is the leader of their tribe and constantly abuses Senua because of her darkness, and is even implied that he killed her mother due to the same darkness.
No.
You will not defy the gods! Come, child, take my hand. Come, Senua.
I am leaving!
You cannot escape the darkness. Your curse will make everyone suffer. You will have blood on your hands!
Senua has to go through this extremely traumatic childhood with no one by her side, until she meets Dillion. Now Dillion becomes her lover and is one of the only ones who tries to understand her and make her voices go away, even if it's just for a little bit. When a horrible plague hits their village, Senua believes that her darkness is the cause of it, so she leaves to fight the darkness alone and promises Dillion to come back to him. When she returns, she finds her village burned down by the Norsemen and Dillion at the end of the village blood-eagled. Not so fun fact, Blood Eagle was the worst punishment for Norsemen. You were placed in a prone position, your ribs severed from the spine with a sharp tool, and your lungs pulled out through the opening to create a pair of wings. Yeah, fun. This once again triggers Senua's psychosis, this time stronger than ever.
No!
She picks up Dillion's head and journeys to Helheim, determined to fight Hela and bring Dillion's soul back home. In my opinion, Hellblade is one of the best representations of mental illness in modern media, but like the creator said, it was also very dangerous since they wanted to represent it realistically. A lot of modern media represents people with mental disorders in a bad light, like, for example, the movie Split representing DID very badly. People with psychosis are also presented as psychopaths with lack of empathy, which is very harmful representation. That is why Ninja Theory wanted to represent it realistically and shed the stigma surrounding it, and also stop making it such a taboo to talk about it. This is why they actually invited medical professionals and people experiencing psychosis to help them represent it correctly without doing any harm. So what is psychosis? Psychosis is a condition that affects the way your brain processes information. It causes you to lose touch with reality. You might see, hear, or believe things that aren't real. Dr. Paul Fletcher helped the creators with the representation of psychosis and says it best in their official documentary.
Psychosis is a descriptive term, and it refers to having a loss of contact with objective reality. So it's characterized by two main sets of symptoms. One of them is hallucinations, where somebody experiences perceptions when there is no actual objective thing out there to perceive.
Who are you?
And the other is delusions, where somebody comes to very often bizarre, unpleasant, frightening beliefs when there's no good evidence in favor of them.
There's no doubt about it. The source of the darkness is in Helheim. And the goddess Hela holds his soul there.
A lot of people with psychosis have sometimes trouble discerning reality from hallucinations, and this is very well represented in the game, where we can see that reality starts to mix with Senua's delusions. Her main delusion being that she can save Dillion if she beats Hela, giving her an objective to fight for when she doesn't see a purpose. Another common symptom is seeing patterns everywhere even when there are none. They start making connections and trying to solve the puzzle that doesn't really exist. That was geniusly implemented in the game, as we can see here in the video. While we're on the topic of delusions, I want to talk about her darkness that is spreading from her arm. So in the beginning of the game, we get the information that every time we die, in-game of course, the darkness will spread further until it consumes us. Now I have anxiety, and that gave me so much of that anxiety. I kept thinking, well, what happens if I die too many times? Like, I'm at video games. What if I die too much and the game is just like game over? Would I have to restart the entire game? Panic! I later found out from my friend who also played through the game that this is just not true. That it was put there to make you panic, and well, they succeeded with me at least. But that also got me thinking, did the creators just make the player part of Senua's delusion? Did they just show us how people with psychosis feel, even if it's just for a few seconds? They made us believe, and they made us a part of her delusion, and even though I'm kinda mad because it made my anxiety worse, I also applaud the creators because I feel like this is the closest that they could get to making us feel the same thing that people with psychosis might feel. Next thing I wanted to talk about is the amazing sound design in this game. As we know, hallucinations can be visual or auditory, and one of the most commonly known symptoms of psychosis is hearing voices. The creators did an amazing job with this by using binaural microphones, you know, like the ones they use in ASMR, to try to recreate the realistic nature of hearing voices. People dealing with psychosis also mentioned that not all of the voices are necessarily bad, which we see represented in the game when Senua is fighting. Some voices will actually tell you to watch out or look behind you when an enemy is attacking. But this actually makes it even worse, because then you do not know which voices you can trust, and it can make the life with voices in your head even more agonizing. Before we move on to the next chapter, I just wanted to show you this clip from their official documentary about how they implemented different experiences from people with psychosis into the actual game. So in the end, Senua makes it into Helheim, but before she can fight Hela, she first has to go through what seems like an infinite amount of enemies. All enemies that she has already beaten in the game before. It represents the infinite battle that she has to fight in her mind every day. One of the most famous quotes that came from this game is, "The hardest battles are fought in the mind." And this last battle is the perfect representation of just that.
I've got nothing left. No fear. No hate. No quest. Nothing. And you will have no power over me.
In the end, Senua seems to get bested by Hela, but that is when she hears Dillion's voice one last time, encouraging her to live and to accept his death. We see Hela grab Dillion's head and walk to the edge where she drops his head off the cliff, but as the camera pans back up, we see Senua in Hela's place. This symbolizes that Senua was always her own worst enemy, and by letting go of Dillion's head, she finally stops living in denial and she is ready to accept his death and process her grief. She then stares into the mountains as the voices try to come back and bring her down all over again, but for the first time she manages to push the voices down and see the world in a new light.
Oh no. Oh. It's the rocks. The darkness is back. The darkness is back. Wait. What is it?
It feels...
It's different. It
feels...
It's okay. Is it okay?
This is where my story once began.
It's different.
And so it has to end here.
It's changed.
Because I cannot see further than this.
Follow us. We have another story to tell.
I said it before and I'll say it again, this is the best representation of mental illness I have ever seen in modern media. The way Ninja Theory tackled this subject was not only amazing but also very respectful to the people actually suffering with psychosis. We are taking on a journey of Senua's recovery, or maybe more of an acceptance of her mental illness and the death of her lover. We feel with her, we fight with her, and we suffer with her. But the question that always gets asked at the end of this game is, but was it all real? Well, what is real? What is the definition of reality? The definition of reality is the state of things as they actually exist, as opposed to an idealistic or notional idea of them. And by that definition, yes, it was real. It's all she's known. It might have not been your reality, but it was Senua's reality. Hi guys, thanks for watching another episode of Zivus Reviews. If you have any suggestions about what I should analyze next, please leave it in the comments below. Also, go play Hellblade if you haven't yet, because I really think it is an important game and an important step for destigmatizing mental illness. And with that, I am off and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye!